Hello friends, my name is Russian Badger and welcome to my pistol guide for Battlefield 4. In this video, I'll be discussing the statistics of the sidearms of the game and what makes them good, bad, or just downright awful. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Mr. Compact 45. Now, 4 quick things you should probably know before we dive into specifics are that, number 1, as always, I'll leave a table of contents in the description so you can navigate to specific weapons if you don't want to watch the whole thing. And trust me, bro, Chacho, you don't want to watch the whole thing. Number 2, keep in mind that when watching the video, bullets do different damage when striking different parts of the body in Battlefield 4. As in, there is a 2.0 damage multiplier if you hit the guy in the dome piece or the head, a 1.0 damage multiplier if you hit the guy in the chest or the arms, and a 0.93 times multiplier to the stomach and the legs. However, if the rando you're shooting happens to be running the defensive spec, the chest and arms multiplier is dropped down to 0.93, essentially meaning you do slightly less damage. However, that has massive implications, which I will get to eventually, and there are some exceptions to these multipliers, such as the 44 and the Rex, but I will also get to those later. Number 3. Don't get too caught up in the attachments that I'm using. The gameplay will feature a plethora of different attachments just for the sake of variety. Personally, I usually go with the mini RDS and a suppressor and a laser sight, but use whatever you, I don't know, whatever suits you best. I mean, I use those attachments because my splinter cell, my stealth, my sneakiness, but you don't really need to copy me. And number 4, keep in mind that when I do say max and minimum damage, you do maximum damage to a guy when he's really close, like inside 8 meters, and you do minimum damage when he's really far away, hence the term damage drop-off. One final recommendation is that you watch the video in either full screen or at least the enlarged player view. I don't know if people actually click that thing, so you can see the tables and the statistics better. I mean, if you can't handle 1080p, then you should just move to Korea or, I don't know, Sweden, but preferably Korea because K-pop. But if you really like blonde-haired women and Carl Gustavs, then I don't know, go right ahead. The first weapon that we will be discussing, by the way, is my personal favorite. The FN57 has a max damage of 20 and a minimum damage of 11.2, firing at a rate of 455 rounds per minute, having a max capacity of 21 rounds with a tactical reload time, as in reloading before you are empty, of 1.25 seconds, and an empty reload time of 1.4 seconds. And the reason why I call this weapon my favorite is it's just a huge spam cannon. I mean, it's tied for the highest rate of fire among all the semi-auto pistols and is overall a great finisher. So if you're a goof like me that enjoys running around in large groups of enemies with an AEK and frequently biting off more than you can chew when it comes to engagements, it's a great fit, mainly because let's say you heavily damage a guy, but you don't kill him. This thing is really handy for pulling out and getting several shots into the guy, even if you're not that accurate like I am, and I think we all know my accuracy. I can't hit the broadside of a barn with a small. It's sad, alright? But the 21 rounds is that real perk, alright? It's that real good stuff. Now, I have to say that this pistol is not necessarily great for taking somebody down if they're at full health. You have to hit 5 shots in the chest at close range, and I guess that can happen if you're decent at spamming. This isn't too big of an issue with the 21 round capacity, but you still have to be moderately accurate to make that work. So at least in my book, it's best for finishing people off when you're playing aggressively, and decent at taking Carl down from full health if you can click fast enough. However, you may run into a little frustration if your enemies happen to be using the defensive spec, you know, with a different multiplier to the chest and the arms. You remember that? You remember that, what I mentioned earlier? It's a big deal, alright? It's a really big deal. Under normal circumstances, at close range, you can 5-shot them with the FN57, but if they're running the defensive spec, that's up to 6 shots. It's awfully frustrating to get 5 hit markers, point blank, and not kill someone. So just be prepared to get headshots, my man. And remember, you don't have to be more accurate, you just need to fire more bullets, dog. That's the key. And next up, we have something very similar to the FN57, which is called the QSZ92, although personally, I switched the letters around and called it the Suzy Q92 because let's move on. The QSZ92 has a max damage of 20 and a minimum damage of 11.2, firing at a rate of 455 rounds per minute, having a max capacity of 16 rounds with a tactical reload time of 1.3 seconds and an empty reload time of 1.6 seconds. And you know what, man? I'm not going to waste your time. This pistol is used the same way that you would use the FN57. It's kind of a spam cannon. However, it's honestly the inferior of the 2 weapons, and here's why. It has the same damage model and rate of fire, yet a capacity of 5 bullets less than the FN57. It also has a longer reload time than the FN57, and other than that, everything is basically identical. So why would you, I mean, why? it just doesn't perform as well as the FN57 due to the two major downsides. I played with it for at least an hour and a half straight, and I can easily say that in situations where I could spam hardcore with the FN57 and take advantage of the 21 rounds and take down 2 to 3 guys at once, I couldn't do the same thing with a QSZ92. I know it's sad because the SUZQ is such a cool name, but in a nutshell, the FN57 is superior because more reload time and more magazine size. Now let's move on to the M9. The M9 has a max damage of 27 and a minimum damage of 12.1, firing a rate of 400 rounds per minute, having a max capacity of 16 rounds with a tactical reload time of 1.3 seconds and an empty reload time of 1.6 seconds. And I've been using this pistol on and off since release, and I can easily say that it's a great middle ground between a low damage spamming pistol like the FN57 and a higher damaging pistol such as, I don't know, the M1911. It's just right in the middle. The great thing about it is that at 27 damage per shot at close range as an inside 8 meters, it will always kill in 4 shots if you hit the guy in the chest or below, obviously, even if he's using the defensive spec that so many people find so frustrating. Everybody runs that thing, and yeah, I know what it feels like, shotgun users. I wouldn't even say that you don't need to have a dead-eye shot to make this thing work. Even if you're moderately accurate, and I'm talking moderately, alright? The decent damage and rate of fire will work out well for the majority of users, if not everybody. You just have to be careful because there's some noticeable recoil in multiple different directions, as in left, right, and upward, unlike most pistols, which is almost purely vertical, so it may take a round or two to get used to it, but just don't fall in love with it quite yet, because there's 2 other pistols that are very similar that you may want to take a look at, which include the MP443 and the P226, and I'll start with the P226. The P226 is a max damage of 27 and a minimum damage of 12.1, firing at a rate of 400 rounds per minute, having a max capacity of 16 rounds with a tactical reload time of 1.25 seconds and an empty reload time of 1.4 seconds. And since it's so similar to the M9 in terms of usage as a middle ground pistol, if you will, I'll still break down the pros and cons. So, the P226 still has the same damage model and rate of fire compared to the M9, yet it has a slightly faster reload time, and this includes both tactical and empty reloads. I know a lot of you are very concerned about reloads, and thankfully it's faster. The other key difference is the recoil on the P226. It has recoil that pulls slightly to the left and upward, which quite honestly can be kind of awkward to get used to, as it's the opposite of most weapons, seeing as right and upward recoil is the most common. So, it's fairly identical to the M9, yet it reloads quicker and has a different type of recoil. I realize that the recoil may be irrelevant because a large portion of you probably just run around YOLO hip fire all day, baby, all day long, and you're hip firing so often in close quarters that you care very little about the kick, but I thought it was worth noting. And the final pistol that happens to be similar to the M9 and the P226 is the MP443. Back-to-back company 2 day. So, the MP443 has a max damage of 27 and a minimum damage of 12.1, firing at a rate of 380 rounds per minute, having a max capacity of 18 rounds, with a tactical reload time of 1.2 seconds and an empty reload time of 1.28 seconds. So here's where you see some deviation from the other 2 pistols that you may or may not like. The MP443 is the same damage model as the M9 and P226, yet it has a rate of fire that is 20 rounds slower than the other 2 counterparts, at 380 rounds per minute, obviously. However, that's basically the end of the cons. I mean, the rest are pros. When compared to the M9 and the 226, the MP443 has a capacity of 2 more bullets, a much faster reload time, which is actually tied for the fastest among all the pistols, and a much more controllable vertical recoil. I personally enjoy using it more than the other 2. Sure, I may not have quite the same rate of fire, but I'll take a slight decrease in rate of fire if I can have 2 extra shots, more favorable recoil, and a faster reload time. But you know what, bro? I'll leave that one up to you. If you want to use the other 2 instead of the 443, by all means. And the next weapons that we'll be discussing are the 45s, starting with the Compact 45. The Compact 45 has a max damage of 34 and a minimum damage of 15.4, firing at a rate of 320 rounds per minute, having a max capacity of 11 rounds, with a tactical reload time of 1.2 seconds and an empty reload time of 1.28 seconds. Basically, this pistol is the most powerful among the semi-auto, magazine-fed pistols in terms of shot damage. So, in close range, you'll put a guy down at a minimum of 3 shots if you hit him in the chest or higher. The dome piece, obviously. However, this 34 damage per shot can be quite annoying if your opponents are running the defensive spec, as you won't kill them in 3 shots to the chest. You'll need an additional 4 shot to kill them, and because so many Carls are running around with this defensive spec, it can be really, really frustrating to use this pistol. I mean, think about it this way, all right? If this pistol takes 4 shots to kill most players, and so does the M9, the MP443, and the 226, why not just run with those pistols because of their higher magazine sizes and rates of fire? I mean, I'm not saying the Compact 45 is necessarily bad, but if the majority of the lobby is running around with a defensive spec, which happens almost all the time, you may find yourself awfully frustrated. It's hard to get off 4 shots accurately with the constraints of 320 rounds per minute and a capacity of only 11 rounds, just plain and simple. However, there is a bright side here. At least the Compact 45 is better than the other 45 pistol, which is obviously the 1911. The M1911 has a max damage of 34 and a minimum damage of 15.4, firing at a rate of 310 rounds per minute, having a magazine capacity of 8 rounds, with a tactical reload time of 1.2 seconds and an empty reload time of 1.28 seconds. And come on, Alan. Come on, Mr. Alan Kurtz. Alan, what are you doing? Alan, stop. To be completely honest with you, I have no idea why this gun exists. I mean, way over my head, man. Way over my head. It's virtually identical in every way compared to the Compact 45, yet the M1911 has a worse rate of fire and 3 less available bullets in its capacity. Like, just why, Dice? Why? Oh, but Badger, it has that 3.4 times scope. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn about the 3.4 times scope. You know what? I'm not even going to beat around the bush anymore. The 45s pretty much suck in the game. And let me finish, all right? I'm gonna let you finish, but let me finish. I'm not saying this just to be a catfish, or just to annoy you, or just piss you off because maybe you're a big fan of the 45 in real life, but think about it this way, all right? I'll break it down for you. The defensive spec in the game, as in the class upgrade that gives you extra protection to the chest and arms, is the most popular in the game. It's the default. The majority of players run it because it's so effective. And what that means is that against the majority of users, when you use the 45, you're gonna have to hit them at least 4 times to kill them unless you can pull headshots. So if the 45, both of the 45s, take 4 shots to kill in most instances, and so do, oh, I don't know, the 443, the 226, and the M9, why would you even use the 45s? I mean, if the majority of the time, all 5 of those weapons take 4 shots to kill, yet the 443, the 226, and the M9 have magazine sizes and rates of fire that are much higher, why would you even use the 45s? Why? I'm sorry, but it doesn't make any sense to me why anybody would use the 45s apart from pure Ma45 fanboy favoritism at this point. And with that out of the way, maybe Alan Kurtz is some kind of genius and I just don't get it. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but with that out of the way, the next weapon on the list that I find particularly interesting because it has a unique characteristic is the CZ75. The CZ75 has a max damage of 27 and a minimum damage of 13.5, firing at a rate of 360 rounds per minute, having a magazine capacity of 12 rounds, with a tactical reload time of 1.35 seconds and an empty reload time of 1.6 seconds. Now I could just say, oh, this thing's basically a mix between the M9/443/226 and the 45 group, but it certainly has a characteristic that makes it special, right? Even though it lacks a large ammo capacity at only 12 rounds and the damage is only decent, the damage drop off is what makes the weapon so special. So what I mean is, where most pistols only deal maximum damage up to about 8 meters, the CZ75 deals max damage up to 12.5 meters. So what that means is you can 4-shot people from a longer distance, which is something that is really, really valuable for employing on maps that aren't urban terrain. So if it's China Rising, let's say, where it feels like, wow, there is 0 viable cover on this entire map, or it's already been blown up already, and you find yourself frequently needing more range out of all of your weapons, including your sidearms, this is the gun for you. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a game-changing weapon, but you certainly notice a difference in the increased range, and it's certainly more deadly from farther away. And next up, we have everyone's casual, oh god, dude, I don't even know if I want to call it the G18 or Dat Glock, but okay, let's say next up we have Dat Glock. The G18 has a max damage of 18 and a minimum damage of 10.8, firing at a rate of 900 rounds per minute, having a max capacity of 20 rounds, with a tactical reload time of 1.2 seconds and an empty reload time of 1.45 seconds. I think some of this is self-explanatory. I mean, duh, the G18 is a fully automatic sidearm that has the ability to either, I don't know, melt someone in half or get rid of an entire magazine faster than you could say, how are you not dead yet, my man? So From a tactical standpoint, or from a mathematical standpoint, if you will, it's going to take you 6 shots at close range to kill someone if you hit them in the chest down, even if they're using the defensive spec, which is kind of handy. And at a rate of 900 rounds per minute, that can happen pretty quickly if you stay on target. And we're talking really quickly. My one major piece of advice, all right? Don't hip fire. I know I've said that in the past, like, dude, I only hip fire my Glocks, dog. You see how baller I... Well, just don't, all right? The spread increase per shot on this thing is more than double most of the other pistols. So just be careful because this thing can get really inaccurate really quickly. I know I'm a bad example, all right? We've established this. I know I'm a bad example because I'm all about, dude, I always hip fire the Glock. I'm hip firing on the move. Yeah, not only do I oftentimes, or too often, hip fire the Glock, but I also hip fire on the move, which is even more outrageous. Just, come on, man. Aim down sight, try not to move around too much while going full auto, and this thing will work wonders. It's left click to win. It's really not that hard. And if you're not a big fan of full auto, there's always the burst alternative, as in the M93R. The M93R is a max damage of 18 and a minimum damage of 10.8, firing at a rate of 900 rounds per minute, having a max capacity of 21 rounds, with a tactical reload time of 1.35 seconds and an empty reload time of 1.6 seconds. And how it differs from the G18 is that the M93R has a slightly longer reload time, a capacity of 1 more bullet, less harsh recoil, and obviously it's burst instead of full auto, but I mean, duh. Now, I'm not going to say the M93R is necessarily an accurate sidearm. That would be kind of a stretch, but it has half the spread increase per shot compared to the G18. I don't think that the slower reload time or the extra bullet necessarily makes it better or worse than the G18, but it really comes down to preference. I mean, I'd say the M93R is slightly better at range compared to the G18, but neither is really all that great beyond... It's not really good at range. Neither one is really all that great beyond point-blank range. It's really just a matter of you liking burst compared to full auto. It's not very difficult to get the M93R to basically full auto if you can click fast enough. But you know, sometimes it has that thing, you know what I'm talking about, where it doesn't necessarily jam, but it doesn't quite go to full auto. It's kind of like the AN94 in Battlefield 3. You know what I'm talking about. And if you have an easier time taking somebody down by putting steady, accurate bursts on someone, go M93R. But if you want to left click to win like me, just go Glock, my man, go Glock. I go with the Glock just because I can left click once and kill somebody really, really easily. But the two are very similar in terms of sheer close quarters killing power. Now, let's move on to the hand cannons of the 44 Magnum and the MP412 Rex, starting with the I stuck that loafing 44 beneath my head. I'm sorry, man. That song is too much fun to... It's too much fun, man. He said, Willie Lee, your name is not Jack Brown. You're the dirty hack that shut your woman down. Okay, I'll stop. The 44 Magnum has a max damage of 56 and a minimum damage of 37.5, firing a rate of 150 rounds per minute, having a max capacity of 6 rounds, with a tactical reload time of 4 seconds and an empty reload time of 4 seconds. They're both the same, obviously. And before I get into anything else about the Magnum, keep in mind that both the 44 and the 412 Rex have a special headshot multiplier of 2.35 times. Now, that might not sound like very much, but that literally means that the 44 Magnum can one-shot someone with a headshot from approximately 39 to 40 meters away. That's pretty far, my man. That would be pretty impressive, at least in my eyes, if the 44 wasn't such an awkward weapon to use. I mean, sure, at close range, it will still one-shot and two-shot people anywhere in the body, but at least in my experience, there's such a weird delay on the Magnum. It's awkward to use, but hey, my man, if you're a stone cold dead-eye shot, by all means, go around 1- and 2-shotting people, and the thing is, that can be both amazing or extremely awful depending on how you use it. The Magnum has extremely tight, and we're talking like tight like a tiger, ADS spread as an aim down sight spread while you're aiming down your sights while stationary. But it's absolutely terrible. It's so bad if you start trying to fire ADS while on the move. So definitely keep that in mind. Stand still if you can. But for those of us that are less accurate, here's some words of caution. Alright, my man. Not only does the Magnum obviously only have 6 shots as a revolver, but it has an extremely long reload time. As in 4 seconds, whether you reload tactically or on empty. It doesn't matter. Just let that sink in. That's 4 seconds. That's a pretty long time. I mean, that's a long time to reload, my man. There are literally some support weapons that reload faster than that, like the RPK-12 and the MK5. So you better take the guy down with your original 6 shots or you may just be completely out of luck. And I don't mean to disrespect you if you're an avid 44 user. I really just think that the weird delay between you clicking, the gun firing, and the bullet hitting is just too awkward 5-me. It's just too awkward. But if you can get over that awkwardness, this thing is definitely deadlier, especially over longer distances compared to basically all the other sidearms. So you got some serious distance working for you if you can get over that little awkwardness. Now, let's compare this to the 412. The MP412 Rex is a max damage of 56 and a minimum damage of 28, firing at a rate of 180 rounds per minute, having a max capacity of 6 rounds, with a tactical reload time of 3.4 seconds and an empty reload time of 3.4 seconds. Obviously they're the same. So in comparison to the 44, this weapon is far superior in close quarters. It has a higher rate of fire, a faster reload, and is much more accurate while firing on the move. However, that comes with a downside of having a much greater damage drop-off over range compared to the 44. It can still be employed quite similarly. I mean, duh, it's a giant hand cannon that can wreck scrubs in close quarters if you use it correctly, but yet again, can be kind of awkward with the weird delay mechanism. And I want it to be so good. I want it to be like the Arizona Ranger with the big iron on his hip, but the delay kind of ruins it. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say the delay, just use the MP412 Rex for a round or two of domination. You'll know exactly what I mean. It's kind of hard to describe, but you'll get the delay once you play with it for a little while. It can still be effective, at least in my opinion, but I would recommend using a different sidearm because there are much greater, more versatile options out there. But if you're a real quick draw McGraw, laser beam accurate sharpshooter, then by all means, bro, it's going to work wonders for you. I think it's pretty nifty that you can one-shot somebody with the Rex from 25 meters away if you hit them in the dome piece, or in the head, if you will, and that's all I have to say about that. And I know it's technically a sidearm, but I'll cover the Shorty 12G in a future video because I really don't have complete stats on it yet, and I don't want to leave you misinformed. And that's about it, my man. Thanks for watching. I mean, if you want to see the full stats of all the weapons, I'll leave a link in the description. I think that's about it, my man. So, if you'll excuse me, I now have a thing that I don't really have to go to at all. Because Edgar doesn't know how to pick up women. Hashtag swag. I can't start this light. I can't start this lighter. What? Okay, never mind. Peace out, homegirl.